Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to all of you. And before I start sharing my slides and stuff, kind of just introduce myself just a little bit. Again, I guess you've kind of got the rundown, and there's really not too much I would add to that, other than to say that I don't profess to be any kind of expert or anything on AI. I just use it a whole lot. And the reason I don't profess to be an expert is I was going through this slide presentation, and I gave this presentation, it was about 3 months ago, and what you're going to see is almost completely changed from that presentation 3 months ago, just because AI has changed so much. And every time I give this presentation, it changes, and then I have to go through and be like, okay, well, here's all my examples that I gave last time, and they just don't fit for this time anymore because we have a newer and even cooler tool to use. I also hope that you understand that when we're presenting about AI and artificial intelligence today, that if I were to present strictly from a PowerPoint presentation to you, then that would be like me trying to shove a square through the circle hole. It just doesn't work. This is artificial intelligence. It's live. It's interactive. And so while we're doing this by Zoom, I do have the chat kind of open on the side. Feel free to type in some questions. If there's something specific that you want to see or you want to hear, let me know. I know I'm dealing and talking to an academic institution, so we have practicing physicians and we have practicing individuals, and then we also have people who are teaching, and you're trying to teach students and train the next generation. And as you may know or you may not know, your students are growing up in a world of artificial intelligence. They're using it. If you don't think they're using it, then you're probably not correct in that. They are using it. They whether you know it or not. And in all honesty, we're using it as we speak. I mean, when I logged in here today, you guys have the AI translator turned on to Zoom, which is listening to us. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I am using right now, my Zoom, and let's see if this will work here. Now, so I have it where my camera is focused in on me, and that is using AI and artificial intelligence to track me right now as we speak. It's blurring my background so you don't have to see my messy office. This stuff has all been going on for a while. Whether you realize it or not, we're using some forms of artificial intelligence and everything we do. I've been using artificial intelligence very actively in my medical practice and also teaching about it for over a year now. We're coming up on my year mark of being all AI based transcriptions for my documentation with my patients. My life has been incredibly different since that time. My wife has shifted the dinner time that we serve dinner about a half hour earlier every day. I come home less stressed. I find myself done seeing my patients earlier than ever, and wondering, hey, I could probably squeeze in a few more patients here, which I have not done because I feel like I just enjoy having the extra time and the time base. So, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I'm gonna pull up my slides here, and like I said before, this is not intended to be just a me talking to you kind of lecture. I am happy to talk about different AI technologies out there and how we're using them here in clinical practice today, and any ideas I might have with it. And again, I can't profess to be an expert because there is so much going on that it's hard to stay on top of one thing. It's almost where if you want to talk about AI, you got to start having a niche now about this is the type of AI that I use, and I use it for this purpose, just to be able to stay an expert, because it's coming out so fast and it's coming out so rapidly. It's just hard to stay on top of it at the moment. I do take medical students. I'm an adjunct clinical professor for osteopathic school here in town, and so I almost always have a student, and they're always bringing stuff to me and be like, "Have you used this tool? Have you used that tool?" So they're really good about finding new tools. So talk to your students that you're working with, and students and residents you interact with, because they know what it is, and I'll bring that up a little bit later. So with that, give me just a second. I guess the other thing I would do is please give me forgiveness, because I am going to be moving around different technologies, which is very dangerous to do. When you present with PowerPoints, it's nice because it's stable and you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to be jumping around screens and stuff, so just forgive me if I struggle with technologies. Even people who use technology a lot struggle with technology. I'm going to share my general desktop with you so that way I can do that easier. And then I am going to start my actual slide here. Going on. I do, like I said, I will try to follow the chat a little bit, but that requires me to occasionally jump in and out of this screen, but we'll figure it out. So I can see like Lydia, I can see you, so feel free to flag and wave if my audio drops or anything like that happens while we're doing the presentation here. So this is my presentation, elevating your teaching with AI, and we'll keep moving forward here. And if you can hear kids screaming in the background, I apologize for that as well. But that's here presenting from home. It was actually less busy here at home than it was in my office today, so I said I'm going to present from home. So all right, just a minute here. Okay, so first off, they wanted me to include this slide. I have no financial relationships to disclose. Nobody gives me any free stuff. Nobody gives me any kind of payment to promote any of these technologies. Everything I'm going to present today, I'm presenting because it works for me and it works really well. I pay for it just like every other end user. Again, kind of a little bit about my background and stuff. I do full-time family medicine. I do a lot of clinical informatics and training, students on how to use clinical informatics, which is a lot of data processing and data geeking out, but it's pretty fun. I am a past president of our state osteopathic medical association. And one thing about my hobbies that you should know about me and my patients know about me is that I keep honeybees. I'm a second generation beekeeper. My father was a beekeeper. And so I'm a past president of our state beekeeping association as well. And just a picture of my son and I here keeping some bees. I like to have a hobby where 10,000 insects are trying to kill me. It just gives me stress relief and relaxation. I don't know why, but it's fun. This is just a picture of my beard. I like to point out to people that I'm also an informatics and clinical information geek, and I love data. And so I have webcams on my beehives that can monitor when things happen. I actually have scales on my beehives, so I'm very much in the new age and stuff. What you can see here is kind of cool. This is my I have temperature sensors inside my beehives. I can tell when I'm having problems with one of them without ever having to even go into my hive. When a beehive is doing well, they keep the temperature at a solid temp, and when they lose their queen or they're not doing well, like this hive right here, it starts to follow the same temperature as the outside temp, and that tells me I need to go into that beehive and I need to do something about it. So just kind of fun little things that I use with information. The reason I bring that up is I now use an AI tool that sends me an email or a text alert whenever there's anything going on in my beehives that's wrong. So there'll be temperature spikes and things like that. I'll get a text on my phone that says, hey, you need to go check out hive number 6 at this apiary, and we go from there. It's just, this is in every kind of industry right now. The first 10 or so slides here are very academic, because I think in order for you to understand how to use AI in a clinical practice, you have to understand a little bit about how AI works. You're welcome to zone out on this if you want to, but I will tell you, if you can understand just a little bit about the technology, it will make it easier for you to use the technology. And so first off, I always bring up this slide because, you've got patients, I've got patients that are really concerned about AI. As it's been getting bigger and bigger, we're seeing some psychiatric disorders to start developing around AI. I've had patients come up to me and say that I need to increase their SSRI dose because they are so worried about the robots taking over. I am not making this up. This has happened with 2 different of my patients now. Just like patients who spend a little too much time listening to political talk shows and they start to get some psychiatric issues. Now I'm getting patients who are listening to too many AI podcasts about how robots are going to take over, and I've had that happen as well. But the reality is that there's 2 types of AI. You have narrow or weak AI, and then you have general or strong AI. We're not yet at the general or strong AI, despite what you read in the news and despite what you see and despite what you see in blogs and podcasts. We still have not developed an AI that's capable of understanding, learning, and applying knowledge across diverse tasks that are human-like. This is what the major companies are talking about trying to build, and this is what they want to build. And then this is what every movie that you watched growing up in the 80s and 90s was showing you ends up being very bad for humans. But the thing is that we haven't achieved this yet. This technology is not there yet. We're still in the days of narrow or weak AI, which is AI that's designed for very specific tasks. Speech recognition, you've got self-driving cars, Siri, Alexa, those are earlier things. And then we have ChatGPT. So the real question is, what changed a few years ago? I mean, it was just the last few years, it's just like AI has come on the scene. And what actually changed? And what changed was this right here, which was the paper that came out in 2017. It was actually a group of researchers in conjunction with Google that wrote a paper that developed a new technology or a new mathematical formula that could be used for programming AI. which was called transformer architecture. And it really moved things forward, and it allowed programs to be written to form these current versions of AI that we have. Older models, when trying to interpret human language, which at its heart, AI initially was a formula. Think of it as a fancy math formula that could interpret human language. So instead of interpreting numbers, it could interpret human language. And older models were very sequential and limited, whereas the newer models work out of sequence, which is what you need to do to understand language. Anybody that speaks a different language, that the grammar and the rules in another language are different than in English, because we rearrange where we put our verbs, where we put our structure of our sentences. Well, with the current AI and this new model, this transformer architecture model, we could now train computers to think out of sequence instead of 1 + 1 = equals 2. We can take things out of sequence, and that's very, very important if you're trying to understand things like human language. So, for instance, take a simple sentence like "I am feeling blue today." All right. So if you say "I am feeling blue today," the word "blue" is very hard for you to understand out of sequence or in sequence. It can be a color or it could be an emotion, but what you really need to understand is also the word before it, which is "feeling," and then that allows the computer and the current algorithms to say, "Okay, feeling." So if there's the word blue associated with the word feeling, then it's more closely related to the emotion and not to the color. Older models would just take it very sequentially. They'd see the word blue, and that must mean color, and therefore that's what we do. But because of this transformer technology, the entire sentence is able to be deconstructed by the computer and then be able to find where the closest relationships are based upon the whole structure, and then come out with the most likely answer. Now, again, I realize that this is very technical, but I'm just hoping you to understand that, this is the heart of the technology with AI, is that it's able to deconstruct human language, human sound, and even pictures now in a way that can then be reinterpreted and then give us a answer back. Back again, reconstructed in human language once again. AI, the way, if I tell people, if you had to ask me in one sentence how AI works, I'd say it's very fancy math is what it is. It's very fancy math, and I know that's a very oversimplification, but just try to understand that's what's going on in the background here. So then you have pre-training, and what happens is for you to make an AI model is you load a whole bunch of information into your math algorithm, into your program, and you feed that through, and you let the program process tons and tons of answers and tons of data and get it all ready for you, so that way it's ready and available when you ask it a specific question. This is the very expensive part of making the AI model. This is the part that takes millions of dollars of equipment usage over several days of time. This is when ChatGPT comes out and says we've got a 5.0 model. What they've been doing is they've been working on this pre-training. They've got this new model that's been processed and available for you to now start asking questions to. And this is why you have to keep in mind that AI is always limited based upon the date. Like when you're using AI to deal with modern events, you have to realize that it's only up to the date that they formed the last model. So, if they programmed your model in 2024, then that AI is not going to be very good at telling you about things that happened in 2025, because it was programmed and trained on information before 2024. Once it's programmed and trained, it's kind of set into the algorithm. They're trying to get around this, and there's different things that are, they're trying to do to make it so it can work better with modern events. But keep that in mind, especially when you're using it for medical information, that it's going to be using information that's going to be as recent as the last time they did the training of the model, which could be a few years old or not. And then G, or predictive generation of image or sound. So this is the end result that we're going for. This is generating text by predicting the most likely next word or sequence based on the context provided. So what this is saying is this is the fancy math I was talking about. So if you tell an AI model to generate me a limerick, that is a math. You're basically asking it a math question of generate and limerick, and then it's going to find the answer. It's going to then reinterpret back into English for you and give you that funny limerick or whatever you're looking for. So that's the generative part. So we kind of did this backward, but if you've ever wondered what ChatGPT stands for, then this is the three things we just talked about. It's a generative pre-trained transformer. So it generates text, it has that pre-training, that database that it grabbed from of all that information, and then it has that base transformer architecture that it allows it to understand human language. So again, this is very technical, and I know some of you aren't even wanting to know all that, and I'm okay with that. But if you kind of understand that, it helps you understand when it goes wrong, and it helps you understand the technical limitations, which we'll talk about. So it's important to remember AI is not new to medicine. We have been using AI-like technology well before ChatGPT. We've been using it in radiology, imaging, interpretation. Radiologists, please look over at this or look over at this. There might be a problem over there. We've been using early warning systems. For instance, when I prescribe a medication that the patient is allergic to, that is, a form of AI algorithm or something to help me. It's clinical decision support to help me, make a better decision. Billing has been using this to say, hey, you're ordering an A1C on a patient, but you just ordered an A1C on a patient last week. These are all forms of AI, but it's just getting smarter, and we're applying these newer technologies into it, and so it's just getting better and better the further down the road that we go. This is a huge market in the healthcare market right now. You can see that at the end of 2022, we had 11.2 billion invested in AI, then 19.3 in 2024. We're predicting this to be a 427.5 billion with a B market over the next several years. I think this is way under stated here when it says there's 100 plus startups currently focusing on medical AI. I think it's probably more than doubled that by now, or even more. This is one of the fields to be in right now if you're working with AI is being in a health startup, and that's what makes it so confusing. I'll talk about this later, but that's what makes it so confusing for us as physicians and teachers and educators is just there's so much out there. So it's like, where do I start with? What do I use? And I feel your pain. It's tough. So some of the current limitations of artificial intelligence, I used AI to make these additional slides. If you want to learn about AI, great way to learn about AI, ask AI to teach you about AI. It's at that point it can tell you, just say, what are your limitations? What can you do? How do I use you better? You can ask a ChatGPT, or you can ask Google Gemini, or whichever one you prefer to use. And you can just say, give me some ideas of how I can use you. And it will say, sure, here's a bunch of ideas. And you can even be more specific. You can tell it, hey, I'm a physician practicing in family medicine, or I'm a physician practicing in XYZ. Or you can say, I'm a physician educator and I educate second-year medical students or first-year medical students. You can be specific, and then you can say, give me some ideas of how I can use you. And it will give you some ideas of how you can use it. So like I said, you can use AI to learn about AI. And that's why when you're using these tools, you don't see that many user manuals for them, because the makers of these tools are trying to get you to use the tool to learn how to use the tool. The idea behind these tools is they should be so easy to use that you can quickly adapt to them. So with that, here's some limitations. These slides were 100% generated by artificial intelligence. What I did is I asked, hey, AI, I'm giving a presentation, I'm giving a medical lecture. Can you tell me what your limitations are and what I should talk to other physicians and physician educators about? So here's what it came up with. I have verified this, so I've gone through and made sure it hit all the ones that I was concerned with, but here you go. So hallucinations. I really like the image it gave me there. I have a hard time looking at it. By the way, I do apologize for the really small text on the screen. One thing I haven't figured out how to work out with AI is to get it to make the text readable for a presentation. I don't know why that still continues to be an issue, but it loves to add information. AI loves to be helpful, and it hasn't figured out how to exactly give me it in the way I like. Even when I tell it to give it to me in the way I like, I still haven't been able to figure it out. But hallucinations are the biggest thing that you do need to worry about, and this is probably something you've heard about. The interesting thing about this is that when I gave this talk, when I started talking about AI 18 months ago, this was a much bigger issue than it is now, because they are working on hallucinations. They are trying to minimize them, and most of the tools that are actually physician used and ready for physicians and actually branded and what I would consider more safe to use, because we've got people like Mayo Clinic using it and supporting it. Those ones have really turned down the hallucinations, so you really don't have to worry about those as much. But you should always be keeping in the back of your head, is AI making this up? And basically what this is because I told you this is a math algorithm, but AI is pretty much programmed not to fail. And what that means is don't fail. And when you ask a question, you've got to give me an answer. And what that means is if it can't figure out the answer, then in the past it would just make up the answer, and occasionally still now. And so this was the educators. This is how, the when teachers started first recognizing their students were using this. The way they would recognize it is they would go down to the summary of like the journal articles that a student would cite at the end of it, and they would see if they were real articles. Because what would happen is AI would say, well, I can't find an article for this point that you want to make, so I'm just going to make the point, and then I'm going to make up an article for you that looks like an article. And so you could go to their bibliography or their citation index, and you could just click on it and be like, okay, that's not real, and you could tell that they were using AI. The problem is, this is like any mousetrap. Students figured this out a long time ago, so they know how to get around that if you're really worried about that happening with your students. But the point is you have to be very careful with these hallucinations. But it's because it's trained not to fail. It's trained to give you an answer, and that's part of the early algorithm that makes it so good. Is because it works so hard to find you an answer. It typically does find a right answer, but occasionally it makes one up too as well. And again, this is improving. It's gotten better, but it's just something that you need to be aware of that AI can do. It can create a hallucination. Privacy concerns in medicine. This is a big one, of course. You've got to worry about if you're putting in HIPAA information into an AI algorithm like ChatGPT, which I don't recommend doing that straight up. I don't have a problem with using ChatGPT for medical questions. You just have to know how to use it. But what I don't recommend is plugging in anything that would be a patient identifier into ChatGPT, because you just don't have control over where that data is coming from. The other concern is, where is AI getting its information from too as well? This is a more deep concern, but what I don't mean by that is inaccurate information, although that of course is an issue as well. It's, is AI somehow having access to data sets that are protected? A lot of these systems, when they did that pre-training, they just scrubbed through the whole internet, looking for whatever information they can, and if somebody accidentally put some, privacy secure information there, well, it gets fed into the AI algorithm, and then it's always there. So this is one of the big things that's a big issue right now that's being talked about. I probably should have started this section with the caveat that a lot of these we don't have solutions yet for. I mean, we're still having people argue in Congress and set policies on this stuff. So we're still waiting for some of the solutions on this. But you do have to be very careful. The other thing that you need to worry about too, I think this is discussed in another slide as well, is that there's a potential for discrimination going on with any of the data sets and that it's being trained on. So if it's trained on a data set population that's primarily Caucasian and from a different a certain demographic, then the data and the answers are going to be skewed towards that, just like any other kind of study. So again, with AI, we just have to be very careful with the answers that they're coming for and how you're using it. And I have a little algorithm you can use for when you should use AI and when you should not, coming up here. Informed consent, this is a big deal. And the question is, informed consent from whom and by whom and when. It's a very ethical and legal consideration when using AI. Patients, should they be informed that you're using AI? Should they not? As of right now, I do support making sure patients know that I'm using AI, at least with my dictation. Now they know that very quickly because I say, hey, I'm going to use an AI scribe, and then I put my phone down right in between us, and they know what's going on. It has their name on the phone, and it's recording our conversation. And I explain how it works, and I explain to them that it does not save this recording after 1 week, and it's just using the text information. I will be honest. To date, even practicing in a very conservative, rural Missouri population, I still haven't had anyone say no yet. I'm waiting for it that I can't use it. But I think it's also just how you explain it. Like I just explained it to you. I explained it to my patients, and so they understand I'm not recording this conversation. It doesn't get stored in a library, and all we do is the program takes the transcript from what we say, and it generates a note and then erases the rest. They're pretty comfortable with that. I haven't had anyone not say yes to that, but I do ask for their permission. We do have it in our consents now, so when the patients are coming into the clinic, they actually have to sign their consents, and it says, I consent to allow them to use AI scribe technology. here. I explain to patients that it's at this point it's more accurate than if I have that college student follow me, and so I'd rather do that, and then it's just them and I in the room, and they're usually. And then I also explain to them, and these are my patients, and I've been in practice for a while, and so I just explain, hey, this is to help make my job easier, and usually when you explain it that way too, then they're much more willing to let me use it. And then the other question is going to be is when do you need to get permission to use AI to analyze their medical information, then to help you make decisions. And I don't know about that. I'm still on the fence with this. I mean, this is still getting argued. My personal opinion on it is that I don't get their consent to go look their information up and up to date. I don't get consent to use, XYZ other stuff to help me make medical decisions. So do I really need to get consent to help make other medical decisions? I don't know the answer to this one right now. I mean, these are interesting debates, and you can bring it up if you want to talk more about it with me. But yeah, these are things that you just need to know are going on with AI, and things that you got to keep in there. I talked about this earlier, but the automation bias, we just got to be very careful with this, particularly when dealing with AI that has not been trained on data sets that are not representative minority or ethnic groups. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal in all medicine and all kind of research, but AI particularly. AI is not a thinking, emotional human, and I kind of have to say that twice sometimes. AI is not a thinking, emotional human. And so it will only use what it's been trained on. And so if it was trained on something wrong or something that has bias, then it will have bias. That's just how it's going to work. Even if that's wrong, even if we think that's socially and ethically wrong, the computer does not have emotions. And it does not think these things through, and it does not have ethics. It is just a math program. And so we have to make sure how we are training AI, we are using algorithms and using information that are reflective of where it should be. And this is where policymakers do need to come in, I think, and be a little bit more involved in and try to make sure that we are, being as ethnically responsible and responsible to minority groups and, gender and all those different, differences among humans needs to be equally representative and appropriately representative through AI. Otherwise, it is going to continue problems where we're getting data that is skewed towards one group and it's not as effective towards another group. Some other areas to consider: HIPAA compliance. I touched on this earlier, but we just got to be very careful that we are not feeding information in that then is going to be accessible elsewhere. So when you're using things like ChatGPT, it is using your conversations to train future conversations in a generalized way. So you wouldn't want to be putting personal health information about your patients into ChatGPT, because then it may be accessible elsewhere throughout the system. Now, some of the tools that I will show you, they work differently. They are not taking the information I put in and then using it in their algorithm. They are using the algorithm strictly to answer your information without putting the information into their database. And so that's what makes it safe. And one of the key tools I'll show you actually even allows you to sign a BAA with them. So you do have that legal HIPAA protection that you could actually put in personal patient information because you have a signed agreement with them that meets the HIPAA compliance. Data encryption is a big deal too. It's on the back end is the server encrypting all this data, keeping it safe. Once again, even with that BAA, now that if I'm putting personal patient information into another source, I got to make sure that they're now safe as well. This is the good example. This is my my dictation service. They are at least temporarily storing my files and my patient information. I've got to make sure that now they are using appropriate encryption in case they get hacked. We've got another person involved. And then liability and accountability. Boy, this is wild, wild west at the moment in all fields, not just medicine. Who owns AI? Who owns all those funny images that you generate, is there a copyright on those? Who owns them? Who doesn't own them? Are they taking copyrighted information to make part of it? And then how does that apply to your new image? And then who's responsible when, the AI gives us a suggestion that we follow that causes harm? These are untested fields. those of you, that are physicians on this call will know that, that's going to really fall strictly on us at this point. We are taking the as Microsoft calls it, the co-pilot approach at this point, where, we're still the captains of the ship. It's just helping us. We still need to make the final decisions, and we're liable at this point. But at the same point, can I, as a physician, one day turn around and sue ChatGPT because they were supposed to give me XYZ advice and they gave me the wrong advice because they were fed wrong? These are all very unanswered areas that, as you know, by default right now, you as the physician have to be responsible for anything you choose to use. You can use these as tools to help you, but you've got to be the one responsible in the end. This is just kind of a cool picture. This was from an event we had last fall. If you've had a chance to see a drone show, they're great. They're fun to watch. And it's all AI driven, and it's pretty cool. And so this was a customized drone show that actually had a picture of our hospital and had our logo on it and everything, and could be fully customized for us. But it's everywhere. It's being used everywhere. So these next few slides are I'd like to get some more information about AI. How do I get some more information about AI? How do I get trained for AI? But before I jump into those, I'm just going to take a little break here, hit zoom. I know you can see everything that's going on here, but I need to see just a second here. How do I stop? I'm going to stop my sharing for a second. Oh, I just want to look at my chat. Okay, we don't have any questions in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I just want to make sure nobody had popped in anything at this point. So, okay, so going forward with AI training. Let's see here, Windows changes. So, do you want to learn more information about AI? How do I learn more information about AI? Just a few quick slides here for you. You can Google any of these things. They're easy to find. The first one that I thought would be interesting is there's a place. I actually subscribe to these guys for some medical stuff, but it's called Hippo Education. They have a podcast called Practicing with AI. And it's fairly new. It's only been going on for about a month, so they only have like 3 or 4 ones. But what I thought be pertinent to you is their most recent episode, just a few weeks ago, was using medical education and AI. So it's an hour-long discussion with some medical educators and how they're using AI today from a couple of different colleges. It also has the standpoint from how some students are using AI to learn and how some teachers are. So it's Hippo Education Podcast, and it's or you can just go to any of your favorite podcast providers, like on your phone, and just type "Practicing with AI." And that podcast, Practicing with AI, has some good stuff that you can listen to. And it's probably a little more in-depth than some of the stuff that I've discussed today, just by time limitations. So anyways, so I saw that for you. Thought you might find it interesting. The American Medical Association has their own website called Augmented Intelligence in Medicine. So the AMA, also the AOA, has decided that they really want to call this augmented intelligence and not artificial intelligence. I get where they're coming from, because what they want to do is stress that this is helping our own intelligence. We're still making the decisions. I think that this is a very narrow-minded or PR move on their part. I don't know what else is to call it. For us as these associations in medicine to say that we are going to rename some branded terms that are already just what's a better way to say this? The train has left this station. It's called artificial intelligence. It's going to be artificial intelligence. Good luck trying to rename this. But they call it augmented intelligence, so just know that's what the AMA calls it. And it's just branding. But and I get where they're trying to go with that. I just think, we're not going to have any kind of impact on trying to call this what it's going to be named as, and it's going to be artificial intelligence. So JAMA also has their AI channel as well, so you can just type in JAMA AI. They have a collection of articles and movies to help explain a little bit more about what I just went through. So if you really want to learn a little bit more about how AI works, they have some stuff to help you understand it. And they also have a nice news feed about AI in medicine. Both of these sites get pretty, and this next one get some pretty technical stuff in it. They're talking about using it for research and stuff like that as well, but they do have some generalized stuff in there as well. So New England Journal of Medicine also has their AI journal, which is available as well, called it's dedicated towards AI application in medicine. And again, a lot of this is very high level and high academic kind of stuff, not as applicable, but if you really want to deep dive into this, you've got some resources. So then, before I get into some specific examples and stuff like that, I want to get you I'm going to go through this here in a few minutes, but in just a few minutes, I'm going to kind of stop here and let you guys just talk and ask me if there's anything specific you want to know about AI or tools or specific instances you want to find AI help you, and I can give you some of my suggestions. If not, I've got some prepared as well. But just be thinking about that if you want to ask me some questions here. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. But when we're talking about which AI tools I should use or which you should use, I just want to, again, tell you, this is really difficult to determine. I told you how there's just hundreds of companies out there right now, and none of these companies have years of experience with AI because there's just not years available. And if you start Googling or start using Reddit or whatever you like to do for reviews, you've got to be really careful because those are actually usually advertisements. Even if you Google, what's the best AI voice dictation software to use at the moment? Most of your hits and most of your websites are going to be websites set up by those people to make it look like they're very good and very highly reviewed. So it's really hard to trust those. I would recommend working with people who are already using it or asking around and seeing who's using it, so you can actually get a recommendation from somebody who's already using a tool and what they're using. The thing is that AI brought this technology down and made it really cheap to use. It's in the end it's fairly cheap to use, and because of that you can make a startup really quickly because all they do is they lease out the technology. So like, I want to make a medical AI that answers certain questions for you. I can just rent out space on ChatGPT servers and use that to answer my questions and form a business, so I can brand it under my business, but I'm just renting it out. Long story short, what I'm saying is it's just really easy for startups that look really cool, but in the end, it's just a guy or two working in their basement and trying to get something going. So you got to be very careful with a lot of the AI companies right now, especially the medically related ones. And then the biggest one, like if you talk to other doctors that are using AI, and I follow a bunch of threads and conversations with doctors who are using this in practice, there's very limited options with AI right now. They're actually integrating into your charts. So whether that be Epic or Oracle or Athena or something like that, it's they're talking about it. You see it in the news, but it's still not being used outside of test sites and things like that. At least on a global basis, some of these AI technologies. So I would tell you that the thing that makes AI the most useful for me is the ones that are integrated right into my chart and right into my workflow. Those are the best ones. And right now and then the last thing is, these are not industry specific limitations. Like, these issues apply to all other industries right now. We're having lots of issues of which AI tool do I use, and then your company invested in an AI tool, and then a year later they've sold out to another company. And this is how startups work in the technology field, but it's happening at a much more rapid pace, as technology always does. It continues to accelerate, and it's accelerating more rapid than it was before, which was very rapid before. So some practical applications of AI. I wanted to go through some of that, maybe some case studies and stuff. I was gonna feed up here just a second. I can stop my share here real quick. So I'm gonna pause right here and ask if anybody has any questions about AI at this point, or if there's something that you really want to review or go over here, so I can kind of, I've got about 20 minutes left. It's not going to be enough time for me to show you every tool that we're currently using. And so is there any particular tool or particular aspect of AI you want me to address or see, and we see what we can do. Feel free to unmute, add in whatever you'd like.
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah, I see that. It says, so with AI
Okay.
tools embedded in medical record now, Epic, for example, will eventually move. Yeah. So what you're reviewing is you're talking about Epic and stuff. So Epic's probably one of the bigger players that's got a game plan going on, but they're still and Epic is in-house developing their own AI, which I think is great. So that'll be built into their chart. Oracle Cerner's got one too that they're developing. But you're right, they're very narrow at this point, and they're just very limited to note summarization and stuff like that. There are some third-party tools and wraparound tools for Epic that are looking really cool, and I'm really happy with that. I've got a buddy who's a residency director at the University of Kansas next to us, and they're using one right now that is a wrapper, meaning it's built on top of their chart, and it's writing their patient portal messages back to their patients, which is really slick. So you're like Mrs. Smith's cholesterol's high. Could you please write her a letter and let her know that her cholesterol's high? And then it just pops out a note for her and says, Miss Smith, your cholesterol was XYZ. We recommend you reduce it by doing, 1, 2, 3. So that's pretty cool. So yeah. As far as the Epic Slicer Dicer, I'm not as familiar with that tool, so I can't speak to that. So, and then are there AI tools you can recommend for teaching preparation? And that's Lydia. That's a great question too. So, we're going to talk about that, and I'll talk about some of my tools here. So, I think I'll jump into one for teacher preparation and things like that. There's some pretty cool stuff, and do that. Let me give you my case study here. It's actually not as very medically recommended, but it's just using PowerPoint's Copilot. So Microsoft has Copilot. That's their name for their AI tools. You may have heard of Dragon Copilot, which is their tool for doing note transcription as well. I think they just call them Microsoft Copilot. I don't know what their branding is at this point, but we looked at that as a tool. I did play with it. It was okay. It's just really expensive to use their software for the medical dictation side of things. But I don't know if your institution pays for the Copilot the license or not. Most of them do at this point, but I'm just going to start screen sharing and kind of show you again here. Give me a second here. Screen. I'm just going to share my entire desktop. I know that looks weird for a second. Give me a second here. So the case study I was going to give you for just using Copilot was this was my slide, right? So one of the things I use Copilot for that's awesome is just prepping my PowerPoint presentation slides. Graphics, imaging, layout. Let Copilot help you with that. It works really good. So I made this entirely by AI. It's a great example of just how to quickly make a slide real quick with AI. So I asked Copilot, I said, using the Copilot built into PowerPoint, I said, create a title slide for a presentation called Elevate Your Teaching with AI. That was exactly what I typed. It gave me this. This is not what I wanted. So you notice that it gave me all these little bullet points, and actually pretty good. This probably would have been a better lecture than I'm giving, but it gave you all these bullet points and really cool stuff. So the question was, what did I do wrong? I didn't like the results. So I went back to Copilot and said, create a very simple title slide that says Elevate Your Teaching with AI by Michael R. Brown, DO. That's what gave me this slide right here, which worked out pretty good. It even threw in the animation itself. So the question is, what went wrong with the slide? And this is just some basic rules with working with AI. One, I wasn't very specific. I just told it to give me something. And two, I didn't give it any parameters. I didn't give it any, add this, do this. I didn't tell it make it simple, make it complex. The more information you give to pretend you're solving a word problem. Back in the days, we all, hated or loved word problems, depending on who we were. The more information you have in a word problem, the easier it is to solve. And AI is the same way. Give it more information, it'll make it much better for you and it'll work. And remember, it tried to be helpful. So the reason I got this really complex slide was because it was trying to be helpful. It's trained to be helpful, and so it gave me all these bullet points as well. This is a funny, I do a lot of political representation here in the state and work with our state, political organizations and stuff for our medical association. And I always say, how is AI like a politician? And I've met with congressmen, senators, both on the state and national level. I've never had a politician disagree with me face to face. I mean, they just never have. I mean, I can be completely on the opposite side, and they just don't disagree with you. If you ever talk to a good politician, they just don't disagree, and they just know what to say. They might not agree with you, but they don't disagree with you. That's like AI. AI is trained to be a politician. It is trained to not disagree with you. It's trained to be happy. It's why when they do head-to-head studies of patient portal messages written by physicians and patient portal messages written by AI, the patients choose the AI messages hands down every time because it's friendly, it's nice, it's not tired, it hasn't had too much coffee, it hasn't, it's nicer. AI is trained to be friendly, so it's always going to be friendly. And it's designed to be friendly and helpful at all costs. That means even sometimes at the cost of honesty and accuracy. So just remember, AI is not human, it doesn't have ethics, and so it will be helpful at all costs. So when you're asking questions, just remember that. Interestingly enough, I put this slide in here of why physicians are primed to be really good power users of AI. It's because we actually are already trained to work with assistants who help us that might have less training than we have. physicians have actually been fairly early adopters compared to most industries with a lot of the AI technologies out there, because we're already trained on the captain of the ship mentality of I'm okay taking, something written by a nurse or something written by a medical student, reviewing it, fixing it, and making it work for me. And AI is kind of like that. It's this untrained. I would tell over the last year, I feel like AI, my dictation has gone from the accuracy of the high school medical student following me, who I've hired as a scribe, to my first year medical student following me, hired as a scribe. It's just gotten better. It's doing a good job with that kind of stuff. So here's a great slide. This is from the Vanderbilt's website on how to use ChatGPT for your task, and I think it's a great slide. You can go to their website if you want to find it, but basically, if you should use AI for an answer, is ask, does it matter if the output is true? All right. If it doesn't, feel free to use ChatGPT. That means if you're writing a story for your kids, I use it to write. I have an ongoing bedtime, nighttime story saga with my kids that I read to them at night. And each night they tell me what they want in the story, and then it generates a story and I read it to them. So, last night they wanted a princess who was riding a unicorn who had two younger unicorns with them or something. So, and then ChatGPT writes me a chapter. Okay, I don't care if that's true or not. We can use ChatGPT for that. If it does matter if the output's true, you have to ask yourself, do you have the expertise to verify that the output is accurate? And this is where physicians do well. We do have the expertise to verify if it's accurate. And so the next question is, are we willing to take full responsibility, legal or moral, for any missed inaccuracies? And if we answer yes to both those, then yeah, go ahead and use, I wouldn't even just say ChatGPT, whatever AI tool you want to use. But if you answer no to either of these, that you don't have the accuracy to verify its output, or you aren't willing to take full responsibility, then it's probably not safe to use AI. So a nice little simple formula on whether or not you should be using artificial intelligence or not. All right, so first off, we talked about how do we use AI to help us with learning. So one of the cool tools we have and that we can use are custom educational podcasts. And before we do this, I'm going to just try something real quick. I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to restart it again because I want to make sure, there we go, that I'm sharing my sound here, okay? So I'm going to restart it here, okay? And what's really cool about some of these technologies is, and I'm going to go to my website here, and Lydia, I don't know if you're doing something, but I need somebody, yeah, thanks. I'm going to need a thumbs up if you can hear this, okay? So, because I can't hear the audio when it happens. But every AI tool has, most of them have like a voice mode or an interactive mode now where you can just talk to it and it talks back to you. And so I'm going to show you ChatGPTs, and I will use this sometimes when I'm driving, just to, instead of listening to a podcast made by somebody else, I will just start talking to it and have it start educating to me. So like if I have a vacation coming up, like last year we went to Europe for the first time. So I had a lot of questions about the countries we were going to. And so I remember I was on a long drive, it was like a 3-hour drive. I spent the whole time just asking my car or asking ChatGPT to educate me about the country I was going to, what were the favorite spots that tourists would go to, and a little bit about the history of those spots. All just back and forth kind of stuff. So I'm going to start this voice mode here. Let's see if it works.
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Great. Hey, I'm working with a bunch of medical educators today, and we'd like to know what's the best way that we could train medical students on understanding pulmonary function tests.
That sounds like a great initiative. One effective approach is to use a combination of interactive lectures, hands-on practice with actual pulmonary function testing equipment, and case-based learning. You could also incorporate some online modules and quizzes to reinforce the concepts. Do you want more specific ideas? Just let me know.
No, not at this time. All right, so Lydia, were you able to hear that okay? Okay, perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some other stuff we can do. Hey, I am a family medicine physician, and I've got a patient here who speaks only Spanish. Could you help me interpret what I'm saying into Spanish for my patient?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to help. Just let me know what you'd like to say.
Hello, my name's Dr. Brown. I'm going to be taking care of you today. Could you tell me what's wrong?
Hola, mi nombre es el Dr. Brown. Yo voy a atenderlo hoy. ¿Podría decirme qué le pasa?
Interesting. How long has that been bothering you, and what makes it better and what makes it worse?
Interesante. ¿Cuánto tiempo lleva molestándolo? ¿Y qué es lo que lo alivia? ¿Y qué es lo que lo empeora?
All right, so I just stopped there just to kind of give you some basic examples. You guys can play with this all you want. If you're using ChatGPT, notice here's something cool. It put all the context, like the conversation here that we were having. It's already chat. It's typing it out for us too as well, so we can review that if you wanted to for accuracy. You could even drop it into your chart. The cool thing about this is my voice transcription software that I use, we called Suki. I'll use an interpreter in the room, but it will take the patient's Spanish that they're speaking to me or whatever language they're speaking to me, and it will use that information and put it into my note and translate it back into English for me. Even if the translator missed it, it's listening. So the voice dictation softwares, they don't care what language the patient's speaking. It translates it all back into English for us. So kind of cool, kind of a cool little feature. Let's see here. Let's see here. So the and again, a lot of you have asked, how do you know if it's accurate? The answer is, how do you know if I'm not saying again, you've got to be able to make this decision. I don't know, but you've got the transcript here, so you can look it back and see if it's accurate or not. I'm just showing you what's here. I'm not recommending you necessarily use this as well. But again, I'm just showing you that these are available. You can use this as anytime. So in our limited time that we have left, and again, feel free to play with this as you want to. Some of these technologies might not be good for prime time, but they're there, they're growing, and they're starting to, become available to us. You may have followed Apple's announcement last week. They've put the live translation into the AirPods now. So when you're talking to someone or someone's talking to you in Spanish, it will mute their voice and start translating in real time into English into your ears as they speak. So this stuff is just getting more and more common, and I see a time where it's going to become very ubiquitous that we're using it. So another thing that I think would be helpful for you guys, if you're not familiar with open evidence has been kind of a little bit of a game changer as far as AI goes. I'm really worried for the future of UpToDate. I love UpToDate. But when I talk to my med students, they're using open evidence and they're not using UpToDate now. And I think the death nail for any type of future technology is when the younger generation stops using you and starts using someone else. So UpToDate's kind of becoming the Facebook of medicine, where it's only the old people are using it. The new younger ones are really using open evidence. And open evidence is great. It is supported by the Mayo Clinic. It is in partnership with the New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA. So you want to ask where the resources they're getting and what studies they're using. They're getting them from these, as well as all the public available health journals that are out there when you search stuff. And rather than spend time kind of coming up with questions, you can play with this. It's free for physicians. It's ad supported, so while it's searching, it shows you ads for drugs and XYZ. That's what's supporting it financially at the moment. I'm just going to go through and show you some. Let's see here. I think I can show my history. This is literally my account that and there is no cost to open evidence. So this is literally my account that I use to see my patients on a day-to-day basis. So these are questions that I've used just since the 4th of November in real live clinic scenarios and things like that. So let's see here. Here's some good ones. This is a billing one. So I said, what would be the appropriate CPT code to remove the base of an earring that's embedded in a patient's earlobe, requiring local anesthesia and a scalpel to remove? I wanted to know the CPT code. Did a great job. Found me the exact CPT code. I gave it everything that I did there. Let's see here. I had a patient asking me what was the normal vocabulary for a 2-year-old. I couldn't remember right there at the point of care, what a 2-year-old should be talking. So I just typed it in here. I'll just click on this. So let's see if we can click on it. Here was the answer that it gave me. For a 2-year-old, normal language development is characterized by at least 2-word phrases, the ability to point to at least 2 body parts when asked. Notice that whenever it gives you the answer, it links right here to the studies that it's pulling from, and you can click on those studies every time, and you can actually read the studies as well. So this is one of the reasons that I really like this as well. Here's another one here that I think will be interesting for you. This is a made up one I used the other day just to show you how cool this is compared to looking it up on UpToDate. So I said, what is the current best treatment for strep throat for a 6-year-old female who weighs 19.6 kilograms and is allergic to penicillin? And here's what's cool about this that UpToDate doesn't do. Notice that it said that with streptococcal pharyngitis who's allergic to penicillin, the current best treatment would be cephalexin, but it adds there, provided, of course, that the allergy is not immediate anaphylactic type. But then not only does it give me the dose, but then it says for a child that's 19.6 kilograms, that would equate to 392 milligrams per dose twice daily. So you notice it also took that additional information and gave me the dosing instructions as well. And then it went on to say if the penicillin allergy is immediate, then they'd recommend clindamycin, once again giving me the dose for her based on her weight, a clarithromycin or azithromycin. And you'll notice that if I scroll down here, it gives me my source, and not only does it give me my source, but it shows me the table that it's getting from. And shows me the article that it's from. Now, I thought this was interesting because it's kind of an old article from 2001. I'm like, hey, that's kind of old. It's 24 years old. So I went to UpToDate to verify, okay, what would be the difference? And UpToDate's article was from 2010. So again, and it's like, okay, there hasn't been much research done or updating on this done and everything. So I was comfortable with this. But you'll see, not only does Open Evidence answer your question, but it sources it and it'll include helpful tables as well. And then it will give you these links that you can go to as well for where it's getting it from. I mean, again, here's from the American Family Physician. You could get an update from 2013. That's 3 years newer than UpToDate's sourcing as well. So again, it's the and again sourcing for that question. But this is Open Evidence. Again, a very, very fun tool to use. And one last thing I was going to show you is they have this USMLE prep mode right here, which is pretty slick. And you can go to this USMLE prep mode. You can tell it which level you're studying for. You can say, I'm studying for step 1. And you can say, okay, I want to learn about cardiovascular system. And I want to learn specifically about heart failure. And you can start a study session. And at this point, it's going to generate to me random clinical scenarios. And it's going to give me some questions. And it's making it specific for that. So now I have a clinical scenario about a 35-year-old male worker. We don't have time to go through this, but I'm just going to answer it randomly. I don't even know what the answer is. Sorry. We're just going to submit. And I was correct. That's not what I wanted. I actually wanted to be wrong. But you can hit here and you can hit explain. And this is the difference with what AI is now you've got a tutor sitting here. You can hit explain. It's going to talk to you about why that question was right and help guide you along here. Well, in theory, of course, it's going to take his time today as well. But again, maybe this will come up in a minute. We can play with it. But this is just a fun tool. I've played with it. It's great because if I don't understand the tool, then what I can do is I can ask it further questions. Like here we go. Now it's finally coming up. So most likely diagnosis was dilated ischemic cardiomyopathy. And again, it explains it all to you, gives you some key history and stuff. But then you can ask a follow-up question and say, could you explain more to me the best type of imaging for this type of condition? And so you can ask a follow-up question like this. And you can see I'm getting a warning here that they're experiencing high demand, so that's why why it's going on. So again, I explained to you how they're buying time off of AI, and that's what they're doing here. And they're saying, hey, the server's kind of full right now. So anyways, is it ethical for AI to help me write letters of recommendation or student feedback based on personalized prompts? Reem's asking that. Whether it is or not, I'll tell you I use it, and I customize it though. I say, hey, Sally was a student with me who did an excellent job. Here's a clinical scenario that she helped me with. Can you write a very favorable letter of recommendation for her? And then boom, I output it. So, and there you go. I will tell you this. I did a presentation like this to a group of residency directors, and I told them that if I were a residency director, I wouldn't even read student personal statements anymore because they're all written by AI. I'd make all the students make a video so that way I could see them in person and then go there, just because I think that I showed them, I in 3 minutes, or actually in 30 seconds, I wrote to them the best personal statement for wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon that I'd ever written. The only problem is I never wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, but it was beautiful, and so the point is I just think personal statements and stuff like that, because of the day of an AI, they can just make whatever they want. I'd have them make a video I just think that's what I would do, and that's a lot harder to fake, and then you get to know the person and get to know them personally. But that's just me. So again, so we've answered some questions. I know we're kind of out of time, and I apologize for that. If anybody's still here, I've got some time to stick around, and I'm happy to answer questions. Feel free to do so.